Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning and happy Friday, November the 24th. Black Friday, if you're listening live, but I'm very pleased to say I have not bought anything yet. I've managed to not look on any shopping sites. I've not opened any of the emails that are spamming me about Black Friday deals. So, yeah, I wonder if you also are resisting the urge to panic buy on Black Friday. And I think we have Cyber Monday next week. But yeah, very excited and proud to say that I have not been panic buying Black Friday stuff yet. Although, if you're listening live, it's only 11 a.m. and there is still time for me to buy stuff I don't need. But I'm definitely going to try and resist. And luckily, we've got the next hour locked in here on Teachers Talk Radio with two amazing guests, which will give me another hour to not be panic buying on Black Friday. So let's get started because I'm so excited. We have got two powerful, strong women and mums here to talk to us today. You might hear, listeners, that I do sound a bit full of cold. If you do want to send virtual chicken soup, that would be very much appreciated. But as these two women who are joining me today will know, we have to show up even when we are not feeling our best, even when we're full of cold and feeling sorry for ourselves, like me. We have to show up. What else is there but to show up and get on with things? But I will make sure there's sometimes some self-care later after the show. But showing up is what it's all about. And if you're here listening live, welcome. We are going to be talking about SEND, special educational needs and disabilities, and very delighted to have two women who are going to share some of their stories, their journeys, and hopefully help inspire us on how to better support parents and carers of children with SEND, but also how to support each other as well. And for any of you who are teachers listening, to consider how we can better support the children in our classrooms, whether that's primary, secondary, college, or higher education, because again, SEND doesn't just stop when a child turns 18, as we'll be talking about today. So how can we continue to ensure that we are all supported and supporting each other as we go forward? But without further ado, let's welcome our guests. So a very good morning to Beth and Marie.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so excited. I haven't had two guests on for a while, so this may be mayhem and madness today.
Mayhem and madness is what we do best.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I was going to say that is us, the terrible twins, mayhem and complete madness. But hey, we're here, so let's do that.
You're here, and this is the kind of energy that I'm going to need today, ladies, to get me through. So, so to anyone listening, you may already be great fans of Beth and Marie and the advocacy that they do for SEND. Very active on Twitter. They do amazing stuff with Twitter Spaces, and I had the great pleasure of joining their Twitter Space the other week, which wow, it was just so wholesome. Can I just say a big thank you to you both? It was so wholesome, considering it was about 7 o'clock in the evening. Wow. So let's talk about you. Let's introduce yourselves, and then I have got a list of questions, but I'm happy if pretty much you two just want to talk for the next hour. Let's just crack on. So let's take Marie first. Marie, can you maybe please introduce yourself? Tell us, briefly a bit about you. I know we'll unpick your journey as we go through, and then we'll come over to you, Beth. So Marie, over to you first.
Okay, so gosh, where do I start? I guess by saying I'm Marie. I'm known as Send Warrior Mum, making a difference on Twitter. That's only been really the last 2 years. Our journey started really when I noticed that my son was behaving differently as a baby, a young child. Looking back, he was always reaching milestones, but differently, in a different way. So, he was always very, very different. He was kind of diagnosed at 3 years old with autism, latterly became autism ADHD, autism with a demand avoidant feature, and PDA, but obviously that's not in the medical books, so everybody refers to it, but They class it as demand avoidant features. Severe anxiety, trauma and tics. He was diagnosed at 3 years old. He's now 20. So I've been in the system, I say an awful long time, too long actually. And it's been a battle right from the very start when I look back. So we went to the doctors, or I went to the doctors when I noticed that Zach was very, very different. The doctor told me I was absolutely off my head. There's nothing wrong, to adopt super nanny tactics and get on with it. That was worrying because it could have gone one or two ways.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could have gone a way where I thought if I was one of the mums that just wanted validation that there was nothing wrong, he could have missed out on really valuable support, which is absolutely needed for the last 20 years to get him through. And even with heavy support, he still struggles. So I I can remember actually saying to the doctor, don't treat me like that. He actually turned around, Poppy, and said to me, well, if there was a touch of autism there, it's not like I can give you a pill for it.
Wow, that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And he might have got away with it with the average mum, but I can remember turning around to him and saying, a pill? No, wasn't expecting a pill. A bit of guidance, a bit of advice, a point in the right direction would have been fantastic. But I can see I'm in the wrong place, so I'm not going to bother you anymore. But, whatever you do, just don't address me like I'm an absolute fool, because I'm not, unfortunately for you. And I can remember going home and sobbing, feeling completely lost and not really knowing which way to turn. I knew nothing about disabilities. I'd had a 20-year career span, with quite a prevalent position within the telecommunications arena. And it was just a shock. It turned my life upside down overnight, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I guess that's where the very start of our battle started. And it's kind of continued, albeit different types of battles, because Zach's in the high need brackets and he's the type of child that's never fitted anywhere. And when I say never fitted anywhere, he's never fitted into mainstream. Some classes were better than others. Some schools were better than others, depending on the way they communicated with us, and tried to understand. Some teachers just automatically got it. And I can remember thinking to myself, well, you've just brought him another year in mainstream. But, it shouldn't really have been a lottery, should it? We tried everything: special schools, independent government-funded specialist autistic schools. Nobody could meet his needs. And it eventually, when he was 14, ended up where he just couldn't cope with life. And I guess this is another point that people probably need to be aware of, particularly parents and also actually, educational staff, because I started to notice differences in Zach. He was starting to get more anxious. And then all of a sudden, overnight, the anxiety really kicked in. He was being sick at school.
Oh, gosh.
And then he confessed to me that he said, Mum, there's something I've got to tell you on the way home from school one day. And that was, I know it's law that children have to go to school, and I don't want to get you into trouble. So I've just been looking at ways to not be here anymore. And, at that, I just pulled into a lay-by. We both sobbed together.
Oh,
yeah. And, that was kind of 5 years ago, and I still struggle now. There's still a massive lump in my throat. And I knew I'd just got to think of something different, because we'd exhausted the traditional education routes. So I literally went home, tried to think on my feet. I researched something called a personal educational budget, which a lot of people haven't really heard of. Children can have them, you can request them. If you've exhausted every avenue as we had, because, they do need an education. So I kind of set to and applied for one of those. And I guess that's where our journey changed and kind of grew again, because I was wanting to really do everything that he'd been missing when he was in a setting where they weren't meeting his needs. And I have to say, I wrote a business plan out, and he had everything that was in his EHC for the very first time. It's been hard work. I would advocate for people to say, yeah, go out and get one. But if you are at the end of the road and you're really struggling, it is an option that is out there. It's incredibly hard work, but it's suited Zach. And we've been able to open up channels into work experience. And by networking, and really reaching out to companies and working Zach's education around special interests, we've really flown with it. So, just kind of following on very quickly from that, because obviously Zach had years out of school in between all of these different placements,
Yeah, wow.
fighting the local authorities all of the time. And actually, if you don't advocate really hard for your children, know the law and speak out, then they just get left behind. But yeah, I mean, to cut a long story short, we've had to battle to keep the budget. Our local authority are not very kind to us. And we've had nothing for the last over 2 years now. So I've been self-funding. I've carried on with the EHC. We've carried on doing the work experience, getting the exposure around Zach's electricity, fascination. He's loved electricity pylons since he was 3 years old. He used to draw them. That was my kind of first, I suppose, where I first noticed. I didn't realise what it meant at the time. He was just absolutely obsessed with drawing these pylons. There was one on a page and, at least 60 pages a day. But that was the very first sign of Zach's special interest. And we've tapped into it now. I've had the flexibility to do that. And he's currently on a work placement with National Grid. That's kind of taking some doing as well, because, he hasn't got the entry levels. He won't remotely do anything educational. But Poppy, is at PhD level, and he can, he's got that much to give. They're absolutely astounded with him.
Incredible.
So it's been a battle. And I have to say, he would have fallen off the edge of the cliff had I not have advocated so hard, reached out and tapped into Zach's special interests. So, we now campaign together. We want to make a difference. We speak on different panels and raise awareness wherever we can, because we don't want anybody to feel like we felt. So that's me, and that's Zach in a nutshell. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Marie. I did. I got goosebumps at the end as well, just hearing how that came full circle. And I know we'll come back. Thank you for setting that out. We can maybe come back and pick up some bits of this, but just the core message there, about how parents and carers want to be advocates. And I think surely most of them do, but it's so true what you're saying, that actually they don't always know where to look for help or what all of these things are, lots of these plans and things you've mentioned that they might not know about. And that's why I just love how you and Beth are supporting people, spreading the knowledge. And yeah, that's really why I wanted to get you on today, because I just think you're both amazing. So let's park that, Marie. That's amazing. Thank you. And Beth, if you're happy, if we can jump over to you, and if you're happy to kind of lay out your story for us, please.
Yep. I have 3 children. My eldest was born when I was quite young. She's 22. Horrendous pregnancy from start to finish, but nothing was identified as being any kind of issues. But as soon as she was born, it was very clear that she had some serious health conditions. She had hyperinsulinemic hypoglycemia, so kind of the opposite of diabetes, where she needed the glucose and had too much insulin. So she was taken straight to special care and spent 3 months there before she came home. She has a condition called Turner syndrome, but she also has, that's rare enough in itself, but she also has over 20 other health conditions that she shouldn't have alongside Turner syndrome. So she's very, very sort of rare and unique in her own sort of right, which has always got us quite a lot of very targeted and helpful support. So I didn't always see sort of the struggles that I can see now, because along came my second child, who's now 14, and she's autistic with anxiety disorder, and now with long COVID health complications. And that's when I seen the difference between having physical disabilities and the hidden disabilities is so massive. I've also got a 5-year-old who's just a normal, crazy little 5-year-old. He's more like a fictional 5-year-old, actually. He just loves life. And the difference between sort of like my girl's journey in schools to his journey in school is just absolutely phenomenal. He loves it. He goes in every day with a big fat smile on his face. He goes skipping in, and it's just, it is such a balm to my soul, having been the parent that's had to drag your kids kicking and screaming going into school, and they hate it and they don't want to be away from you, and they just, so seeing him just being like, yeah, bye mum, I'm off, is really lovely. And so maybe about, I think probably about 15 years ago, I started sort of helping other parents. Just to, when I started with my eldest Rebecca, I had no idea where to turn to at all. And so when I kind of had the knowledge that I did after I had my middle one, it was just a no-brainer to actually help other people who were, just naturally coming up and we were going to support groups and saying, but how do I do that? And, where do I even start? So that then quickly sort of transpired into sort of working with schools, with the parents, because it's a unique perspective. I'm not coming in with any kind of emotional attachment to the child or the school. It's purely for just to see that the child's getting the right identified and targeted support sort of thing. And it just, most of the time, it just works to see, this is the picture from the child's perspective, and it moves forward. And it's nice for the parent to feel that somebody has their back, because it doesn't always happen when things break down. So it's I think probably from my perspective, I have chronic health needs myself and disabilities, and I'm also neurodiverse. So I think I have a bit of a sort of better understanding of sort of what's going on for my kids. And when I say my kids, I mean sort of the kids that I support as well as my own kids, because once I'm there supporting you, that's it, your mind, whether you like it or not, that's it, your mind. That's pretty much a sort of rundown of me of where I've got to where I am now. But it's, I see improvements from 20 years ago. I think that's what keeps me going, because there is definitely more sort of services and schools and what have you that definitely get it and want to get it even more than what we had sort of 20 years ago. People want the knowledge now, and that's definitely the biggest difference that sort of keeps me going, keeps the fire in my belly.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that fire is important, isn't it? Because I imagine you've come up against some hurdles, and I can't believe long COVID thrown into the mix on top of everything that you mentioned you're already dealing with. My goodness me. Wow, you sound amazing, incredible, busy mum of 3. Thank you so much, Beth, for setting that out. That's wonderful. Wow. So listeners, you can see we're in for a treat. We've got still another 40 minutes together with Beth and Marie. So if you do have any questions, if you're listening live, if you're on Podbean, you can type questions into the chat. I can see lots of you are listening live through the website. Unfortunately, we don't have a chat option there, but jump on Podbean, come and ask some questions, and we can put them to Marie and Beth. But I guess it's been interesting hearing how schools have or haven't worked for you. And as a lot of our listeners are teachers, I wondered if we could maybe touch a bit more on that, maybe about that partnership with parents, or finding the right school, or making the decision. Particularly for Marie, you were making the decision to not school, to unschool, and then for you, Beth, how finding the right school has been key. I don't know if one of you wants to jump in on how parents actually take control of making those decisions.
I think for me, it's about being the right environment. So my middle one has been out of education since February. She went to a mainstream secondary school with a low coin centre, which is, and I don't know that we have them across the UK, but in Surrey, it's a communication interaction needs centre for children with autism. And for the first few months, it did appear to be that it worked, but very quickly it fell apart. And she just, for the last 12 months even, she was unable to access the class. The support just wasn't there. The understanding wasn't there. And I think it wasn't from the lack of trying from several other teachers in the school. It's, for me, it was coming from the governors, the chair of governors, because they just kept refusing to put in the training that was so badly needed, because they'd only had 30 minutes whole school send training, and with the best will of intentions, you're not going to understand a child with autism and anxiety with that kind of input sort of thing. And so we kept working together and just trying to get it right and unpick it and unpick it and unpick it. And again, similar to Zach, she turned around after one holiday and just said, you know, I would rather be dead than go back there. And I've been looking at ways to do that don't hurt. And I mean, it still makes my voice shake, because it's just like such a scary, awful thing to go through as a parent and to help your child. But our local authority did step up there for her, because instantly it was an emergency annual review, and the case officer absolutely stood her ground. No, you're not getting more funding, you're not meeting the needs. This child needs to go back to panel and get a specialist placement. Unfortunately, the problem is that there is such a lack of, she's not educationally that far behind. She has obviously not accessed education for a significant period. She was also at home during shielding for 18 months with us. So she's missed significant chunks of education, but if she had the right environment, she's done a taster week at a specialist independent. It's one of the Cavendish schools, and oh my goodness me, I could have cried just literally even the first day seeing her. When she came out, she was absolutely buzzing. She had made, she had friends, the whole friend group and the whole class were all on a chat for about 3 hours that night, and I was just sitting there thinking, she's never had that. She's never ever had the opportunity to have that those kind of friendships and relationships and interactions. And it's just the fact that, you know, it's things like it's a first name basis, except for the head teacher and the deputy head teacher, because they're Mr. and Mrs. But it's first name basis. It's 45-minute classes. They can leave if they need to. There's no pressure to speak to somebody. Will sort of touch base and thumbs up, thumbs down you. If you thumbs down, they'll come back in 5 minutes. It's so low key. There's not a sort of strict uniform. There's not, and it's just, even the adults are, I mean, I loved the fact that when we went in, the deputy head had bright pink hair and several piercings and drives a motorbike. And, you know, that instantly for my daughter was just like, wow, how can you be so cool and be in a school? And you know, she just instantly was so relaxed, even just the first day we looked around it. And I thought, this is how it's done for the kids that just struggle, you know, but it's such a difference. But I think looking around these places, definitely don't go with just on paper. Go in and have a look and see how it works, because although our children are all sort of, they have similar diagnosis, but they're all absolutely individual at their core. They may share certain traits or whatever, but their own individual personalities absolutely designs what they will need in a setting.
Wonderful. Wow. And yeah, I love that, like a head teacher as well, showing that need for authenticity. Like, just because you have pink hair and piercings doesn't mean you're any less of a leader or an educator. Like, that's what our children need to see, isn't it? Like, relatable, real people. And I think that's the problem sometimes we see in some schools. They're being run like almost like a corporate business, and actually lose sight of what it is to be human and make those connections. So wow, just so happy to hear that really good outcome for you, Beth. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we're just waiting to get a placement agreed now. So they've agreed they can meet needs and they've offered her a place. So fingers crossed, in the very near future, she will be back in a school, which is something in February I never thought I would see, if I'm honest. So I'm so pleased for her. Yeah, so pleased for her.
Well, me and all the listeners, we have our fingers crossed for you, Beth. So please keep us updated. That is wonderful. I'll keep my eyes peeled on socials to see how that pans out. But that sounds really promising. So great to see, you know, how they can move back into education. But I know your son's a bit older now, Marie, but can you maybe tell us how that decision worked with taking your son out of school? Was that met with support from schools, or kind of what was your journey like?
In a word, no. No, nobody really got it. You know, and even though it was a specialist independent school, he was still expected to fit in. You know, and looking at the processes that they had, and I think the final straw was the fact that when it was coming up to a year change, I'd gone in 3 months before to say, okay, last year he struggled, so this year can we you know, prepare him better? Can we let him know what teacher he's going to have? And they just decide, and can we, you know, kind of minimise the changes, because, you know, his autism is so prevalent, and they did basically nothing right until the last minute, and then said they were changing the classroom, the teacher, the TA, the occupational therapist and the speech and language therapist. And it was kind of, well, that would blow anybody's mind.
Wow.
And, he was already having a tough time by this stage. And they were still proceeding with, well, we've allocated this OT now, so it doesn't really matter how much she's going to clash or whatever. I think the word was inflexibility, really. And then obviously, they wanted to keep him. I think the problem is sometimes, Poppy, that, and I think can be a big problem, is that schools can sometimes almost feel take it as if it's a personal failure. And it really isn't. It's just that sometimes our children don't fit into that particular setting. We're all on the same side. And we all want our children to thrive. And parents are the experts on their own children. We have to be to get them through.
Yeah.
And so, no, it wasn't really from the school perspective. It was almost like, we'll try and get him back in at some stage. But once you've hit that suicidal ideation, that's not going to happen. I think he was so traumatized, and the trauma built right from infant school, where he wasn't allowed to sausages, right from reasonable adjustments.
Oh, gosh.
He was punished. He was the only child who got his spellings right for 3 years, 15 out of 15s. And you're talking, as an 8-year-old, professionalism and tricky one, successfully. And his writing was just getting bigger and bigger, and there was no compromise. And I think it's so important that, we do meet these needs and we put the reasonable adjustments in, and we kind of work around that. So I think for me, it was trauma building over a period of time, for various different reasons. I think the local authority were quite happy to give us a personal budget for the first 12 months because it was going to save them money, because it was in the high needs funding bracket. The second year I had to fight for it. And, I've had to fight ever since, because it's almost sometimes like they can't seem to grasp the idea that children probably need something different to thrive. They kind of seem to like the safe space, but he was never achieving anything in any of those settings. He never really achieved hardly anything at all.
Gosh.
But with the personal budget, he did alternative English from basic to advanced. He learned how to program Excel spreadsheets. He passed his driving test.
Wow.
Costain have supported us for the last 5 years. We've been all over the country to different projects. He's learned how to deal in a meeting situation. And he's probably had an awful lot more exposure and experience to adult life. It's a shame they didn't keep on with the budget. And it's a shame we haven't been supported for the last couple of years, because I firmly believe that if he would have been doing as well as he was then, before they withdrew the funding, he would now be walking into a permanent position of employment, because his life skills would have continued to improve. He would have continued, he's gone back to being socially isolated. And if it isn't for me and, going to the work experiences and companies reaching out,
Yep.
it is virtually in solitary confinement, which is not acceptable on any level. So the sad bit for me is the fact that I wish they would look at us and celebrate what we've achieved and how we've done things differently, because actually, this can be replicated for other children. And, Zach's journey has enabled me to meet people like you and Beth. We're setting up the community interest company to try and grow this for other children, to create opportunities, to advocate, to support, to educate. There's an awful lot of work to be done. And I guess, so if anything's come out of our battle being so negative, is the fact that we've done things differently and we've educated an awful lot of people, and we're changing the way business people look at these young people.
Yes.
I've even had one company say, I've suggested we should be going into schools and colleges, because actually Zach had got this sort of information 5 years ago. So actually, why are they sat in an educational setting where it's creating anxiety, they're having panic attacks? Why aren't they placed on a training course with the
Yeah.
special interests where they're going to flourish? It's about celebrating the strengths, isn't it? Celebrating the differences,
Yes.
and
And
and,
I
and
think
embracing it.
particularly as well, sorry Marie, but just to say, and for any of you who don't follow Marie and Beth, by the way, follow them both. Find us on Twitter on the tags. But Marie was sharing with me, and it's really incredible. There's that photo of Zach from 2012. A young boy with a photo of a pylon on, I think, his tablet that he's holding. Marie, do you know the
Yes,
photo
I
I'm
do.
talking about?
Yeah,
And that's a photo of him. And then now what I've seen on your Twitter, like him climbing the pylon on his work experience last year. That's what it's about. What you're saying about, we need more maybe apprenticeships and those practical programs, particularly when we see children with autism who become hyper fixated on particular areas, really passionate about particular areas. And just to see with Zach how he is flourishing and thriving due to that passion for pylons. Like, where are schools able to do that? Well, they don't have the funding, do they, to do that, to pick out every
exactly.
child's individual interests. But I mean, yeah, anyone who's not following Marie and Beth, come and follow them, because you will just be blown away by these journeys. And I think that's really what is at the heart of it. But schools don't have the funding to do that. And like, that's exactly what you're saying. That's why we need these external companies to provide those opportunities, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, our journey started with one man from Costain, because Zach's other passion is managed motorways. He's excellent on those too. And, our journey, I guess, started. And again, it was overcoming the adversity, because it was a careers day. School rang me up and said, oh, he's not going to be interested in it. We'd like to give him the day off, and we won't be able to manage his behaviour. And I said, well, can I come? And I'm glad I did, because actually at that career day was Richard, Paddy and Costain, and nobody was interested in the civil engineering side of things. But Zach actually asked them a question they couldn't answer. And they said, well, we'll go away and, we'll research it and we'll get back to you. I think he was 8, possibly 9 at the time. And they did come back to us and gave us an open-ended visit. And I gave that to various different
Wow.
settings, and nobody took him. But when Zach hit that dark time, I literally picked up the phone, because I was thinking I need to do something nice. So I picked up the phone and I rang the head office of Costain at Maidenhead and said, does Richard Paddy still work for you, Chris Hyde? And they said, yeah, I'll pop you through to his mobile. And actually, they thought that I was Zach's teacher. They didn't realise I was his mum at the time.
Oh, wow.
And they built this open-ended visit. They said, I'm sorry to hear that he's going through this. We've never known a kid with such a passion. Of course, we're going to help you. And that said company and Richard has kept this going. And he's enabled us to penetrate so many more businesses by introducing us to their tier 2 people. And then one of the tier 2 people got us into the electricity transmission that enabled us to penetrate Keltbrain, Balfour Beta, where I was climbing pylons, and National Grid. Morrison's Energy have also, which are one of Grid's customers, have also offered Zach a work placement, because they see the value. So it's about showcasing and advocating, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if parents can't do it, then we need to put something in place where people can open these doors. They can deal with this, and people can reach out. People reach out to us all the time saying, I've got a child in my class, they're a bit different. They're usually the ones that have got the demand avoidant profile, because they're the trickiest to manage. And, looking back, everything that I was being taught was actually fueling the fire. I was being taught wrong looking back. They need a completely different management style that's non-directive and, low arousal and everything else that goes with that. So, Beth and I, we do feel really passionate about it. We've met some amazing people, and, we're really looking forward to where the next 12 months takes us, to be able to grow it and just make it better, because we don't want anybody else to feel like we felt, socially isolated at home, thinking it was us. And, these kids are our entrepreneurs of the future. Not all of them, but the ones who do have the special interests, who could potentially do it, then we need to be backing them, don't we?
Definitely. Oh my gosh, it's such passionate and inspiring words. Thank you, Marie. I don't want to go to the news. I want to keep talking, but I know my producer's waiting for me to go to the news now. So you two, grab yourself a fresh drink. Listeners, make another cup of tea. We're going to jump to the news. We'll be back in 8 minutes when I'll be asking Marie and Beth more about maybe some advice for trainee teachers as they're preparing to work with children with special needs. And I'll also be asking you both how you take care of yourselves as being busy mums and carers. So don't go away. We'll be back in 8 minutes' time.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
In today's educational environment, students and teachers are juggling a mix of face-to-face, online and blended learning courses. Canvas by Instructure helps teachers navigate these diverse learning experiences with a user-friendly virtual learning environment that offers flexible access to courses and a consistent learning experience, all while streamlining everyday teaching processes. The world's best schools and universities are using Canvas to create dynamic courses, collaborate seamlessly, and access actionable data that drives student success.
On the 24th to the 26th of January 2024, Bet UK is back, and even better for educators. New for 2024, Table Talks empowers educators to collaborate openly and connect deeply with like-minded individuals in the education space, as well as tech user labs, the brilliant new tutorials and working groups at Bet, where technology users will learn how to get more out of their institution's tech from the top education technology experts in the world. Whatever your goal, you'll find it at Bet 2024. Educators go free. Get your tickets today at www.uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
School summer holidays are often a hot topic, but they made the news again in The Guardian as leaders in Wales appear to be considering changes. According to reports, Wales's Minority Labour Administration wants to shrink summer breaks from 6 weeks to 5 and eventually reduce it to 4 weeks. The plan would see the time added to half-term breaks in October and May. The proposal would equalise the length of terms and break the connection with Easter by fixing the timing of the spring break regardless of when the religious festival falls. The newspaper says the plans follow research by the government which suggests that parents struggle to organise and pay for childcare over the summer. Plaid Cymru, which supports the proposal, said in a statement that the current calendar was outdated as it was designed a long time ago, and that some families find the summer break very long and impacting negatively on their well-being. However, the article also points out that evidence of the harm to learning from school holidays is unclear, as much of the evidence comes from the United States, where summer holidays can be up to 12 weeks long rather than the 6 to 7 weeks in the UK. John Hattie, Professor of Education at the University of Melbourne, said the effects from school holidays are very small, and there is little reason to believe that the length of the school year has much effect at all. A study from 2019 that looked at pupils from primary schools in an area of high deprivation in Scotland and England found no effect on reading skills. In Northern Ireland, schools typically have 8 weeks off in the summer, but generally have results in exams that are better than those in England or Wales. However, a 2022 study did find evidence of worsening mental health in some age groups over long summer breaks. Surveys done in Wales found 60% of parents said they were quite happy with the school year as it is. In 2013, then Education Secretary Michael Gove gave schools in England the power to choose the timing of holidays, but most schools kept the 6 weeks. The BBC News website reports on the Beyond Ofsted inquiry. The inquiry is chaired by former Schools Minister Lord Knight and is funded by the National Education Union. The report from the inquiry recommends that schools should instead be responsible for their own improvement plans. Ofsted has responded by repeating its previous statement that inspections are needed to ensure a high-quality education. The inquiry said that Ofsted was now seen by many as toxic and not fit for purpose, and in need of major reform. The removal of single-word judgments was also recommended, and this echoed another report on school improvement released earlier by the Institute for Public Policy Research, which also called for narrative-style judgments rather than single words. The Beyond Ofsted inquiry recommended stopping Ofsted from having direct contact with schools, and instead schools should draw up their own improvement plans, which would make them accountable to parents and the wider local community. Lord Knight, speaking to the BBC, said Ofsted created a culture of fear in our schools. His report also said that Ofsted had become under-resourced for the high-stakes job expected of it. A spokesperson for Ofsted said 9 out of 10 schools say inspections help them to improve. In related news, the current Chief Inspector of Schools, Amanda Spielman, has written in her final annual report about parents being increasingly willing to challenge school rules in England. She described the unwritten contract between home and school as fractured and that it will take time to repair. The report is broadly positive, but draws attention to a shift in behaviour, attendance and attitudes to education since the pandemic, describing it as leaving a troublesome legacy. Full details of her comments can be found across media outlets. Teach First has celebrated its 20th anniversary, with 3 former Prime Ministers praising the charity's work in tackling education inequalities. According to Teach First's own website newsfeed, the charity has recruited more than 16,000 teachers to work in disadvantaged areas across England. Teach First CEO Russell Horby reaffirmed the charity's mission to help Britain's most disadvantaged children to achieve their full potential. Finally, student immigration data has been released, with Home Secretary James Cleverly stating the biggest drivers of immigration to the UK are students and healthcare workers. He further commented that this was testament to our world-leading university sector. According to data, Indian nationals account for over 1/4 of all sponsored study grants, followed by Chinese nationals. The education sector relies heavily on students applying to UK universities for significant funding, but there is also political pressure to reduce net immigration. Any plans to make changes to the current system will be monitored carefully, although for now the focus remains on illegal migration rather than legal routes. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're here on the Friday morning break with me, Poppy Gibson, and my 2 amazing guests and passionate SEND advocates, Beth and Marie. I can't believe we've only got about 15 minutes left, which is horrible because I feel like we'll have to get Marie and Beth back maybe on a second show in the future because there's still so much more to talk about. But I know we've got lots of teachers listening. I can see I've got some of my students listening. Welcome, my trainee teachers. So let's jump in with the next question. And I wonder, maybe Beth, if you want to go first. For any teachers listening or trainee teachers that are about to start their journeys, what kind of advice would you give them as a mum of children with SEND? What advice would you give those teachers really about supporting children, assessing the children in their care, or what's kind of your words of wisdom for them, please?
I think my biggest sort of thing is working in partnership with the parents is definitely the biggest thing that you can do to empower the child. The child being able to see that, you know, these questions are being asked and that actually the parent's perspective is being put across as well as the child's. Because I think too often, again, it touches back on it being personal. And for each individual child, if you know that they have some needs that are going to need a different approach to them, then it's really important to ask the parent things like, you know, what's worked at home, what's worked when it comes to navigating tricky situations, what are the triggers, because what works for one autistic child or ADHD child or whatever the need is doesn't necessarily work for another. The one thing that I think works for the majority of all children, really, without even additional needs, is a low arousal approach. I would love to see that being sort of brought in across the board, because I just think it is such a vital way of sort of communicating. And I think it's about making the connections with the child first and getting them on sort of side to building a relationship, and you can't build a relationship with them until you have that connection. So maybe trying to find where the connection could be and then work on that. And there is lots of and I would bet that most parents, if you ask them, you know, okay, I can see that they have some sensory needs, but what do I need to pay attention to? The parent would go and find you some free resources or free training or free whatever. I've done it myself for several teachers and SENCOs that have reached out saying, you know, the school are refusing to put any kind of support or training in place, but if you flag it to me, I'll do it in my own time. And so I've gone and found, you know, different sort of resources, and it makes such a difference, because it's things that aren't really sort of touched on at all in teacher training, and yet there is no classroom across the UK that will have, you know, a full class of neurotypical kids with no additional needs at all. So and a lot of the support actually that you would implement for your neurodiverse children would actually support neurotypical children as well, because it's just a you know, that low level approach and putting the needs of the children. It's a relaxed atmosphere, isn't it? It's a more relaxed atmosphere, and if you're more relaxed, then you're more willing to be learning.
Definitely. And I love that. And I love what you said there, Beth, as well, about actually it's not just about thinking about those children with SEND, but actually how could some of those things help all of them. And one example, one of my students, Molly, told me, we were talking about supporting children with SEND, and most of my students were going to be teachers, and Molly told me she'd been into school where you know, we might see that, like you say, those sensory toys can be really helpful for children who are fidgety, like with ADHD, like a stress ball. But Molly was saying that every single desk in the class had a stress ball attached to it on a string. So every child, and actually, yeah, why should not every child, you know, it's going to help the children who need it, but actually it might help all children engage. So we can also learn, can't we, from the way that we support our children with SEND to actually support all the children as well. But
even things like we went to a View One school placement, and they had mandatory brain breaks, mandatory movement breaks, and mandatory zones of regulation, not just for the children but for the staff as well. Wow. And you know, that was just really nice to see, because I thought, you know, it is about everybody in the classroom, and it should be what works for everybody in the classroom, not just the children, but also, you know, from a staffing point of view. And if you're shown as an adult that, you know, it doesn't make you vulnerable to be recognising that you're not in the place of where you want to be right now and how you're feeling in yourself, that's then naturally going to lead to the child feeling comfortable to share that themselves. And again, it's about building those connections and relationships, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We've got Sam in the chat saying, good advice, Beth. Sam says they know some teachers are very good at building relationships. And I think, Beth, you've hit the nail on the head. If you take time to get to know your learners, you're already halfway there, even at any level, whether your children are 4 years old or whether, you know, my students are 18 plus. It's all about exactly what you're saying, Beth, communication and that relationship, isn't it? It's key.
Definitely.
Fantastic, thank you. I feel like you've probably covered everything, but Marie, have you got anything to add to that? Any advice for teachers or trainee teachers?
Well, just everything that Beth said, and you know, if you actually look at the child, look behind the behaviour, because all behaviour is communication, and the child will kind of lead you naturally. But, you know, you'll only hear or you'll only find out if you actually truly look and really learn and listen. and yeah, they'll lead you to the right path. It's just a mixture and a match of everything. But as Beth's already said, all children, if they're heated, should be able to, take the blazer off, or, kind of stuff like this. We know as people, we know what it's like when you get hot, and you dysregulate. And the SEND kids will regulate faster, and the fallout will be more. But I think it's all about being reasonable, really, looking for the signals and being reasonable. But yeah, Beth kind of nailed that one. Not a lot to add to that.
No, but Maria, I love that as well about being reasonable. Like I actually just saw a post someone put on Facebook yesterday, saying who would prefer if secondary school pupils could just wear a polo shirt and a jumper instead of having to wear blazers. We know blazers are obviously a big thing for many secondary schools.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are those that don't have uniform at secondary, but the majority, I think, we're still stuck in this antiquated view of what education is. You need to have a blazer. I remember at secondary school, even in summer, you had to wait for the headmaster to give I think it was called a shirt sleeve order, which meant you didn't have to wear your blazer all the time, or something. Like you had to wait for permission to not wear your blazer, and it's crazy, isn't it? Like
it absolutely is. And some of the messages that we get from parents who are struggling with the children, and all it does is feeds the anxiety, which results in them, not being able to access school. And everybody's on the same side. It's all about making it work, really, being reasonable, making it work. And because if a child feels safe and the needs are met, then that's when they're going to learn. They're not going to learn if they're not in an environment where they feel comfortable and they feel heard. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. But I think it's just going back to the basics, really. Should a child have to have a toilet pass to go to the toilet? And we get messages all the time. And most of our sessions, I sit with my head in my hands, because actually it's all about being reasonable. Whether you're at school, whether you're at home, whether you're at work, in a job, if your needs are met, you're going to perform better.
Exactly, yeah. Even us as adults, 100%. And I think back to what you're both saying, but Beth, you just kind of mentioned there that, and Marie actually said right at the start, parents are the experts, and I think particularly for any trainee teachers or new teachers, so ECTs, early career teachers, you've maybe only had a year of training to be a teacher, and there's no way you could be expected to know every special educational need and disability. And Beth, as you said, everyone's different anyway. So one child with autism may not respond to the same strategies as another child with autism. So I think what you're both saying is key. It's about the partnership, because we can't expect teachers, we can't put the guilt and the pressure on the teachers. They're doing the best they can. But where can we communicate better with parents to ask them for their advice? And I think parents are the key players here, aren't they? Like you say, they know their child best. They know them from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep, or the minute you start the 3-hour battle to get them to go to sleep. But so that we just need to really utilize that partnership. And too often when I was a primary teacher, you waved them off at the door. Parents weren't allowed in. Sometimes parents weren't allowed in the playground. They had to drop them at the gate, and actually, where are we making these boundaries where we need to be dissolving those boundaries for that better partnership to happen? So I can't believe we've got about 6 minutes left. I wanted to ask you then, because you are both amazing at caring for your children, caring for other parents and carers, with your amazing Twitter spaces and work you do on socials. I'm interested, as we're diving into the weekend soon, how do you both look after yourselves? Beth, do you want to go first? How do you, because it must be tough, right? is it tough, and how do you look after yourself?
It's very tough. When my eldest was about 18 months, when I suddenly realised, I cannot be doing it all and still just keep going. And so I started I've got a hashtag with Beth O'Clock, and it started as a 10-minute, just a quick dip in the bath in 10 minutes where I shut door and I didn't have to beat anything but me. A bubble bath and a book for 10 minutes, glorious. It's a firm hour, and my kids know, don't come and knock on the door unless somebody's leg has fallen off, because this is my sanity saver. I've got my book, my bubbles, my candles, my bath, and I'm just like, just let me breathe for an hour, and then I'll come back out to the chaos. I don't care what chaos I come out to, because I've had that hour just to reset and recharge, and I'll have at it, and that's it. But I think also for me, the advocacy side of supporting other families actually takes my mind off my own situation. So it actually helps me in some kind of perverse way. And especially because the health conditions that I have days where, my pain and things are at a level that are just, I'm on the sofa and that's it. So to keep my brain busy with doing things like that really actually does help me. So, that is actually in a weird way my kind of self-care to me as well.
Wow, I love that. You have a great soul and a great heart, Beth. I love that.
Thank you.
And yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think if you know you have that hour coming up, like same for me. Oh no, I can have my children all day. I've got 3 children the same. Obviously very different situation from you, but if I just know, right, tonight is going to be the shower or the bath or the takeaway or whatever, it kind of gets me through the day.
Totally.
Focusing on that positive.
Totally.
To definitely put things. I actually saw a recent NHS advert as well, which was saying, being a parent is hard. Where can you put things, even if they're on the horizon, just to look forward to? I think that's so important. Thank you, Beth. And Marie, what about you? How do you restore after being such a busy mum?
As Beth said, it's almost impossible. I mean, I could have a bath and the bathroom door closed and I've still got my 20-year-old shouting through the door, Mum, have you seen my LinkedIn post? I've thought about a solution to get the L12 to link into this via, and he thinks that I'm as interested or as knowledgeable as he is. So it is quite tricky. And you do have to remember to try and do the self-care, but it's really, really difficult. Another tip I would say is, coming from a different angle, is to find your tribe. Find other parents. They might not live in your village, but your friends who've got typical kids, who haven't got the complexities. It can be very tricky to kind of almost really link into that for some support, because they just don't get it, because they don't live it. If you find your tribe, I mean, Beth's been absolutely fantastic. So, if I hit an absolute crisis point and I still do, you'll still find me, sat there sobbing when, things have just become too much, as strong as I am and as much as I know the law and as much I can advocate for other people. It's emotional when it comes to your own children. So reach out to other parents who do get it. And do you know what I love about our Twitter community? And that is the fact that no matter what we're going through, we always make time for each other. Sometimes we can't respond immediately because everybody's fighting their own battles. Everybody's stressed to the max. But if you find your tribe, our tribe never let us down. We're all there for each other. And that's what I love, because 2 years ago, I wasn't on Twitter. I didn't know anybody. But just being able to reach out to people who say, actually, yeah, you're right to feel like that. I felt like that. Because you talk to your other friends and they can't actually say that to you. And sometimes as a parent, you can become a bit intolerant of the everyday parent who they've got lots of positive things to say. Their kids go to the proms and they get good reports and they get A star. We'd be happy with an average or whatever. So I think it's finding other people who do get it, who have got your back, who can tell you it's okay not to be okay.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And for anyone who is a part of Beth and Marie's tribe will know what they're talking about. I joined your one Twitter space. I hope to join some more. Unfortunately, I was at graduation this week. I couldn't come, but I could see, even just looking back at the engagement, the interactivity shows, like what you two are doing is so valuable, because like you say, you're relatable, you're telling it how it is, you're not sugarcoating it, and that's what people need, particularly when they don't have that tribe offline. So just massive kudos to you two for just being incredible. So I guess just before we finish then, where can people find you on socials if they want to connect, if you're happy to share that, if you want to remind us of your Twitter handle?
Yeah.
Shall we go for
Sorry. Mine's is Beth_tastic on Twitter or X. And yeah, I think Marie's is
Martini Marie, but I'm known as Send Warrior Mum Making a Difference. We're trying to get the hang of TikTok. We're not very successful. I think we're a bit too old.
Oh wow! Oh, I look forward to this. I didn't know that was happening.
If you want to look at Zach's travels, over on LinkedIn, I'm Marie Martin. I think even if you just Google me now, I think, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to find us. But yeah, come and join us. Come and join the sessions. Are we allowed to say what the session's called for people to find us?
Yeah, please tell us the session name.
Okay. We were a bit worried about sort of advertising. So our sessions are live sessions on Twitter Spaces. They're called Sharing the Load as an Unpaid Carer. Sometimes we pop with those who get it. We run them every Friday morning at 10:30 a.m. unless we've got, like today, we've come here to chat here. So we started doing some on a Wednesday evening at 7:30. They're all recorded as well. So for people, you can join live if you're not available during the day on the Wednesday evening ones. They're always pinned to the top of our pages. And if you're following us, you'll probably get sick of us sharing them, because we just need to reach the people who we've not reached yet, because to turn somebody's journey around from coming on, sobbing down the phone, not knowing which way to turn, to sending us, you know, when you've empowered them, of you know, them coming back on a couple of months later to a huge success stories, how they've managed to turn things around. And it's just brilliant. You know, well, I think you can hear it in our voices. We just love it. It's become our absolute passion, and you know, Beth's like my twin. So it really is. It's just making a difference for others and growing it, so it becomes everyday occurrence for our children to have the best futures.
So wonderful. Oh my goodness. And just, sorry to Beth and Marie's tribe, who unfortunately couldn't have their space this morning, but we're so grateful for you to giving up your time on Teachers Talk Radio instead. And we will be sharing this as a podcast episode as well, in case you missed the start of the session today. But yeah, just get involved with them. And I think that's where social media comes into its own, because even the Twitter space that I joined of yours recently, people don't have to speak. Sometimes you just want to listen and just know you're part of something bigger. So do come along, listen into them. You know, if you just want to listen and feel like you're with people that get it, come along. And yeah, just keep doing your great work, ladies. I'm in awe of you both. And hopefully, you know, I'll keep following your journeys and your TikToks and maybe have you back on the show in a few months' time to hear how things are going.
Oh, we'd love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invite. We've really enjoyed it.
Oh, I knew you'd be amazing. You've been absolutely fabulous. I wish you both a wonderful weekend. Beth, make sure you get that bath and that book later.
Oh, I will. I hope you all have a good weekend as well.
Thank you both so much. And to everyone listening, that is the end of our show. Time flies when you're having fun. It's gone so quickly today, but join me again soon with some more guests to help educate and inspire us. And wishing you all a great weekend. I'm off to make a hot chocolate, I think, and I'm gonna snuggle up with the dog and some reading myself. But wishing you all the best. Look after yourself, stay warm, and be back very, very soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.